He was created to end the most terrible war in human history, and he did it twice. First, by burning cities to the ground, turning wooden neighborhoods into ashes at a temperature that melted asphalt. And then, by vaporizing two of them in a nuclear fire that the world had never seen before and prays never to see again. The Boeing B-29 Superfortress became the only aircraft to drop an atomic bomb in combat. But by the time the bomb bay doors of the Enola Gay opened over Hiroshima early on the morning of August 6, 1945, this bomber had already killed more Japanese than both nuclear bombs combined.
Its story did not begin with triumph. It began with desperation, insane amounts of money, and engines on fire that killed crews faster than the enemy. By early 1943, America faced a seemingly unsolvable geographical problem. The Japanese Empire controlled a vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. The distance from the nearest Allied bases to the Japanese islands exceeded 2,000 miles. The Flying Fortress, the backbone of the American bomber force in Europe, simply couldn't reach. Its maximum range was about 1,000 miles with a full combat load. This meant one thing: without an air war, Japan could only be defeated by invasion. And military analysts' forecasts predicted 1 million American casualties and millions of Japanese victims during the assault on the islands. That same November, at the Cairo conference, President Roosevelt promised Chinese Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek to begin bombing Japan from bases in China by the spring of 1944. The promise was political desperation. China had been bleeding in the war with Japan since 1937 and was on the brink of exiting the conflict.
Without the Chinese front, millions of Japanese soldiers would be freed up to defend the Pacific Islands. But Roosevelt did not have an aircraft capable of fulfilling this promise. Simultaneously, somewhere in secret laboratories, the Manhattan Project was unfolding. Scientists were working on a weapon of unimaginable destructive power, but they had no means of delivery. The atomic bomb, as envisioned in 1943, would weigh about 5 tons. No existing bomber could lift such a load to the required altitude, carry it thousands of miles, and return. America needed more than just a new plane. It needed a flying aircraft carrier, capable of crossing an ocean, climbing above enemy fighters, carrying the weight of a small truck, and yet defending itself from attacks. Such a machine did not exist. On September 21, 1942, the first prototype, the XB-29, took to the air from Boeing Field in Seattle. The engines burned, not metaphorically, but literally. The 18-cylinder, 2,200 horsepower monster was so raw that it regularly overheated and caught fire in flight. The engine crankcase was made of magnesium alloy to reduce weight. In a fire, magnesium burned at temperatures above 3,000 degrees Celsius. This was enough to burn through the main wing spar in a matter of seconds and cause catastrophic structural failure in the air. On February 18, 1943, the second prototype burned over Seattle, killing Chief Test Pilot Edmund Allen and his entire crew. This did not stop the program. It couldn't be stopped because too much was at stake. By the time of the Cairo conference, American industry had built fewer than 100 B-29s. Only 15% of the aircraft were serviceable. Fewer than 75 pilots knew how to fly this monster. It took 150,000 man-hours to assemble one plane. Workers in Kansas assembled bombers outdoors in winter at minus 20 degrees Celsius because production capacity couldn't keep up. The program's cost was ballooning like a cancerous tumor, $3 billion. For comparison, the Manhattan Project cost $2 billion. The B-29 became the most expensive military project of World War II. More expensive than the atomic bomb it would one day drop. On June 15, 1944, the first combat mission against Japan took place. 68 B-29s took off from bases in China. 6 aircraft were lost.
the target was not hit. General Arnold, the father of the B-29 program and head of the Army Air Forces, had already suffered his third heart attack from stress by that time. Boeing had bet everything and was losing. But the machine that killed its creators contained technologies years ahead of their time. The B-29 became the first production bomber with a pressurized cabin. The crew could work at an altitude of 30,000 feet without oxygen masks, in relative comfort and warmth, while the temperature outside the skin dropped to -40 degrees. This gave a huge advantage over Japanese fighters, which choked at such altitudes. The B-29's defensive armament was remotely controlled through periscopes and analog ballistic computers. One gunner could control 4 turrets with .50 caliber machine guns at once, simply by turning the sight.
The system automatically accounted for the aircraft's speed, gravity, air temperature, and even humidity, providing lead compensation. It was so complex that even chief Soviet designer Andrei Tupolev, when his engineers later copied the B-29, did not believe his people could reproduce the electronics. But they did. A range of 3,250 nautical miles meant one simple thing. The bomber could take off from an island, fly halfway across the world, drop 10 tons of bombs, and return. This was 4 times the payload of the B-17. When American troops captured the Mariana Islands, Saipan, Tinian, and Guam in the summer of 1944, the geography of the war changed instantly. Tinian became the largest airbase in the world. Bombers took off every 50 seconds, day and night. But even with a perfect machine and an ideal base, the Americans did not know how to use it. High-altitude daylight raids honed over Germany failed over Japan. The newly discovered jet stream at 23,000 feet blew bombs hundreds of meters off target. Japanese anti-aircraft defenses proved deadly. By the end of 1944, results were meager and losses were mounting. The program needed a man willing to throw out the old rules and write new ones. In January 1945, the 21st Bomber Command in the Marianas was taken over by 38-year-old Major General Curtis LeMay. Behind him was a reputation as a ruthless tactician forged in the skies over Germany. His subordinates called him Iron Ass. He himself preferred another description, which he later uttered.
"If we had lost the war, I would have been tried as a war criminal." He knew what he was going to do. LeMay studied intelligence data and drew conclusions. 98% of Japanese cities consisted of wooden and paper buildings. Industry was decentralized. Thousands of small workshops in residential neighborhoods produced parts for military factories. High-altitude precision bombing did not work, so everything had to be burned. His plan was radical to the point of madness. Fly at night at altitudes between 5,000 and 9,000 feet. Remove all defensive armament except the tail turret. Load up with maximum incendiary bombs, napalm, white phosphorus, magnesium. Each aircraft without machine guns and armor became defenseless, but could carry 3,000 more pounds of fire. On March 9, 1945, without asking General Arnold's permission, LeMay gave the order. 334 B-29s began taking off from airfields on Guam, Saipan, and Tinian at 50-second intervals. The target was the Shitamachi district in Tokyo, an area of 12 square miles where 750,000 people lived. The crews knew that among the victims would be tens of thousands of civilians. The order did not hide this. That night, America stopped pretending it was fighting a precision war. At 12:07 a.m. on March 10th, the first Pathfinder aircraft appeared over Tokyo and marked the target with a fiery cross of incendiary bombs.
The underwater blockade cut off the empire's maritime communications. Post-war analysis would show that this alone could have forced Japan to capitulate had the operation started earlier. Some bombers dropped warning leaflets, lists of cities that would be burned next. But by the end of July, Japan had almost no cities left to bomb. All that remained was to show the world the new weapon. Victory had a price. In fact, 3 prices. The first lay in the belly of every B-29. The engine never became reliable. Every 25 flight hours, mechanics replaced 5 top cylinders on each engine. Every 75 hours, the entire engine. Pilots described takeoff as a desperate struggle for speed, not altitude. Radial engines needed airflow for cooling. If they didn't accelerate fast enough, the magnesium crankcase heated to a critical temperature and ignited. 27 B-29s were shot down or crashed on the night of Operation Meeting House. Many died not from enemy fire, but from their own engines. On August 9th, Major Charles Sweeney piloted Boxcar on the second atomic mission. A fuel pump failed before takeoff, blocking 640 gallons of fuel. Sweeney decided to fly to the rendezvous point. He waited for the third plane for 45 minutes instead of the ordered 15. Over Kokura, the primary target, he made 3 passes and couldn't aim due to cloud cover. He switched to the secondary target, Nagasaki.
The bomb was dropped almost blindly through a break in the clouds. On the return journey, one engine failed in the air. Sweeney headed for Okinawa, praying that the fuel would last. When the wheels touched the runway, the second engine stalled from lack of fuel. They landed on the last drops. The second price was human. 24-year-old Yoshiko Hashimoto tried to escape the firestorm in Tokyo with her family. They took shelter in the Sumida River. Yoshiko's mother burst into flames when her hair caught fire from flying embers. She burned alive before her daughter's eyes, holding an infant. Her father and younger sister died that same night. Yoshiko later recalled seeing burning children on their mother's backs. They were still running, she said. In Hiroshima, on August 6th, 75,000 people vanished instantly. The shadows of people were burned onto the walls of buildings by the flash. In Nagasaki, 35,000. The hills partially protected the city. Random geography saved tens of thousands of lives that would have been lost had the bomb fallen precisely on target. The third price fell on the creators. $3 billion cost more than the Manhattan Project. General Arnold suffered 4 heart attacks during the war. Thousands of workers toiled in hellish conditions. Paul Tibbets, pilot of the Enola Gay, defended the decision until the end of his life.
"I sleep soundly," he said. "I know how many lives we saved." Robert Lewis, his co-pilot, possibly uttered over Hiroshima, "My God, what have we done?" He later denied it, perhaps because saying it out loud meant admitting the truth of those who called them murderers. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito announced surrender. Operation Downfall, the invasion of the Japanese islands, was canceled. Military analysts estimated possible losses at 1 million American soldiers and millions of Japanese. The B-29 made the invasion unnecessary. The Superfortress's legacy outlived the war by decades. Cabin pressurization technology became the basis for all post-war passenger aviation. The Boeing 377 Stratocruiser, a direct descendant of the B-29, became the first comfortable transoceanic airliner. The experience gained in producing the Superfortress made Boeing the world's dominant aircraft manufacturer. But the most dramatic legacy awaited the B-29 in the USSR. During the war, 4 bombers made forced landings on Soviet territory after raids on Manchuria. Stalin ordered the plane to be copied exactly. The Tupolev Design Bureau disassembled the machines down to the last screw. 900 factories and institutes participated in the project. 105,000 drawings. Legend has it that engineers even copied an accidental bullet hole in the wing and a forgotten typewriter in the fuselage, afraid to deviate from Stalin's order for an exact copy.
On August 3, 1947, at an air parade in Tushino, Western observers saw 3 aircraft indistinguishable from the B-29. At first they thought the USSR was displaying captured machines. When a 4th appeared, it became clear Soviet engineers had created their own superfortress. The Tupolev Tu-4 gave the USSR a strategic air force. By 1952, 847 aircraft had been built. The first Soviet nuclear airstrike was delivered by a Tu-4. The Cold War had found its material form. The Enola Gay now stands in the Smithsonian Museum. Boxcar is in the National Museum of the United States Air Force. They remain the only aircraft in history to have dropped nuclear weapons in combat. Of the 3,970 B-29s built, only 2 still fly, Fifi and Doc, living monuments to an era when engineering could end a war. Paul Tibbets said until the end of his life that he slept soundly. He knew how many lives the atomic bomb dropped from the Enola Gay had saved. But other people live in the world, those who survived the fiery hell of Tokyo and the flash over Hiroshima. For them, the B-29 remains a symbol not of victory, but of apocalypse. Both truths exist simultaneously. It is in this paradox that the true legacy of the Superfortress lies. On August 6, 1945, the bomb bay doors of the Enola Gay opened for 43 seconds. That was enough for humanity to enter the nuclear age. 80 years have passed since then. In those 80 years, no country has repeated what the crews of 2 B-29s did over Japan. Perhaps that is the most important lesson of the Superfortress. It reminds us that there is no victory that does not leave scars even on the victors, and that some weapons are so terrible that even the victors are afraid to use them twice. The B-29 was created to end the war. It accomplished its task, but the price of this success was so high that the world still dares not pay it again.